Okay, so for those of you who just came in, good morning. My name is Vinay Sukumaran. A couple of things to keep in mind. Please mute yourselves. If not, I would, in any case, be muting you from here. If you do have any questions or some thoughts to share, please put them up on the chat screen. I will be watching the information that's coming up on the chat screen constantly, and you would be listening to me through your, through your audio system. All right. Okay. I see a lot of you are, first timers to a Bodhi webinar. So let me just take a quick minute to run you through what we do, what Bodhi as an organization does. Okay. So we are going to, in this webinar, take a quick look at who we are and what we do. We're going to take a look at what can you do as yourself, or by yourself, in order to make sure your listeners transform into fans. What can you do if you did take a look at others, the people who are listening to you? What are some of the real solutions? And I'm happy to take questions in the end. So though in this flow, Q&A comes right at the end, you're welcome to ask me questions at any point. You can put your questions up on the chat screen and I'm happy to answer them. All right. Okay, so what Bodhi essentially does is we are into the business of organizational development and we provide organizational development or OD solutions for our various organizations. I must say about 95% of our clientele is corporate, and there's very less non-corporate work that we do. And the manner in which we approach or provide solutions for OD problems is by providing training. Okay. Uh, we worked with over 1,000 clients, and we have helped many such clients, set up and grow internal training functions. We have a very structured approach to training, very rigorous and robust methodologies that we use, and all our workshops are hands-on, experiential. In fact, the webinars are probably the space where the presenter or the trainer talks the most, especially because of the medium that we're using and so slow connections in India. We also an ISO company certified by this elite German body called TUV or TÜV Süd, and we are quite active on the social media. So if you're not following us on Twitter, you can do that. That's our Facebook page. You can go to bodhi.com. You'll find a lot of information. What we normally do is we pick a particular topic and we cover it during the course of the week. Okay, so it's also a great way for you to learn. Okay, I see some people, Sadhna Rao, saying I'm unable to hear. If you're unable to hear me, just check your audio system because we have somebody here uh, who's who might call you and help you. But we have somebody here who's also part of the webinar, and I'm constantly checking and getting feedback whether the person is able to hear me, and they're also on a different network. So Sadhna, could you please check your connection? Okay. So let's get into the crux of the matter. I'm sure most of you are here to listen and understand and learn about what is it that you could do to transform your listeners into fans. Now, I spent a lot of my working life either talking to audience from various backgrounds, or or training people, or doing some sort of coaching, or providing feedback and so on. And I've noticed that there are certain things that work in terms of, first of all, getting people to listen to you. Okay. Secondly, getting them to understand what exactly you're trying to say, and if you could transfer your intention to the other person very clearly, if your intended meaning is equivalent to the understood meaning by the other person, if you that's really how it's put across in some of the old books on communication, then that's the next step. And the last step is if you could really transform them into your fans, into being people who want to, what you now see on Twitter and Facebook and other places, people following you. If you could get them to do that, that's really the third part of the story. So I'm going to take you on this journey of how to move from getting people to just not just merely listen to you, but make them your fans. So let's start by looking inwards. So the first thing, if you looked inward, the first thing which I've noticed constantly, and I conduct a lot of workshops on training other trainers as well as on presentation effectiveness and so on. For example, Day after tomorrow, there's a program starting in Bangalore called as Training Foundation course, which I'm running. And on Monday, there's something called the Train the Trainer certification, which I'm running. A lot of this is about communicating in front of an audience and getting your point across effectively. So one thing which really helps in terms of getting people to listen to you is for you to first be present. So for example, if you were talking to, say, forget about an audience, even if you were talking to just one person, okay, you're sitting across the table and you're having a conversation. If you see the other person getting bored, the other person not, being with you, one of the things for you to check is if you are losing interest, first of all, and if you are not present at that moment. And I meet a lot of people in coaching sessions, and some people tell me that, I'm not interested in this person who I'm, with, and, he or she doesn't listen to me anymore, and, I find it too boring. But the truth is that person is, first of all, bored of himself or herself. Okay, so, charity begins at home. So the first thing for you to do, if you want a person or a small group or even a large audience to listen to you, is for you to first be present. What are some things that you can do to be present? Well, one thing that you could do is activate. So here's what normally happens. We absorb information around us through our senses. Okay, that's the only channel that we have, either through your sight, your hearing, your sense of smell, taste, or touch. So if you want to be present, one of the things that you could do, which in neuro-linguistic programming is called as association, one of the things that you could do is associate yourself to the present. So you could open your eyes and see what you see, and don't just keep your eyes open, but absorb the information. In fact, as I'm running you through this, if you just opened your eyes and looked at what you're looking at, and you kept looking, and you kept looking, and you kept looking, you would notice that you see more things than when you were just keeping your eyes open and blankly staring. So to engage your senses, and likewise do the same thing with your hearing. Listen as well as engage it, and try to listen more and more and more. And same thing with your sense of smell and your sense of taste. If you were to just taste, what taste is there in your mouth right now, if you were just to sort of exercise your gustatory receptors, you'll realize the more you try to taste, the more finer nuances and finer tastes you're able to pick up. And the same thing with your sense of touch. If you're just thinking that, I'm sitting on the chair that I'm sitting, I presume many of you are sitting, try to feel the chair beyond just the sense of touch that the cushion is putting on you. If you do this, you will realize that there's a lot more to it. You can slowly probably start feeling the texture. You can start feeling how hard or soft it is. You can start feeling temperature. Okay, you can start feeling any sense of numbness or relaxation. So the more you engage all your senses into the moment, the more present you become. And this is something that's it's not a new idea. It's something that's been spoken about for centuries. Almost every religion propagates this. So the idea is to be here and now, and to be present, and then communicate. So when you do this, so I urge all of you, next time you're with another person, or you're in front of a group, or you're trying to put something across, the starting point of getting that person to become your fan or listen to you is for you to be there. And if you're not, you can be assured that the other person's going to sense that. They're going to pick that up. They're going to feel that you're preoccupied, and you must have felt this or sensed this. Many times when you're on the phone, you don't even see the other person, but you kind of know if that person's with you, or the person's just doing something else, or the person's typing something, or or not following what you're saying, and so on. And there are many times when you've checked with the other person. It's like, hello, hey, are you listening? Are you listening to what I'm saying? Are you there? This is what happens when you're not present. People tend to pick it up, and any listener, you don't have to be a body language or a paraverbal skill expert to be able to pick that up. People are naturally sensitive to other people's body language, and particularly to another person's presence in the room. You can make out if somebody came to your house, a guest, maybe the father and mother, and this is kid who's a teenager. If the teenager didn't want to be there and just came there for the sake of it, you'd be able to just look at the teenager's behavior and make out that the teenager's there just to, you know, just because he or she had to come. And that's exactly what happens when you're listening. Uh, what this does is, by being present, one of the things that it does is it helps you be in the moment. It helps you, first of all, put your message across with a lot more conviction. And the person who's listening to you is able to pick this up, very effectively. And therefore, what you say becomes far more meaningful and impactful to that person, and you move them from beyond just being a listener into being somebody who, who can connect with you at a slightly higher level, and therefore is more likely to become your fan. Okay, so that's the first thing. I see some questions here. So Sadhana, I hope you can hear me now, and Laren says he's sorted this out. Okay, that's good. All right, so the next thing that you could do if you looked at yourself is what I call walking the talk. Now, this is another critical thing. I quite often give people this example of this guy who once attended my workshop, attended one of my workshops. He was probably about 120 or, around 120 kgs. Okay, or maybe a little more, I don't know. But the point is, he came in front of the group, and there was a point when he had to do a small session or give a presentation to the audience, and he came in front of the group, and when he spoke, he was actually bouncing. He was literally bouncing, and he was, so he came and stood in front of the audience, and before he started speaking, his whole body is his big paunch, and everything was like slowly bouncing and then coming to rest. And he said, I'm going to tell you guys about fitness. And suddenly the audience was like looking at this guy who's so overweight and wondering, you are going to tell us about fitness? I mean, there's something wrong here. So it's important that if you want to transform people into from being listeners to being your fans, one big part of the story is you have got to walk the talk. You can't be somebody who, I mean, I recently met someone who's attended one of my workshops and said that he conducts a lot of workshops to help people start and grow their businesses. And I said, great, that's fantastic. So I asked him, what have you done? What business have you started and grown? And I realized that he's been in business for many years. And in the past 20 plus years, he has not been able to grow his own business beyond a certain level. In fact, beyond a two-person company. And I said, look, this is the starting point of being impactful and transforming people into being your fans is to walk the talk. And one of the reasons why many managers, many leaders are not listened to, not taken seriously in companies is because they don't walk the talk. A leader who's saying, all of you have to be, take more ownership, and, we have to completely overshoot or rather finish our work far before our deadlines, at least this time. And the person who's saying it turns out to be that one person because of whom there's maximum delay in the entire team. Now, this to me is the opposite of walking the talk. So here's the question. The question for you to ask yourself is, if you want people to, let's accept it, you might not be able to make people your fans in all areas. Okay? For example, if you're a person who's not at all tech savvy, and you're trying to give a talk on technology, it might be difficult for somebody to buy into your idea because they're going to look at your life and question you. All right? So the question to ask yourself is, what are those 4 or 5 areas where if I stand up and make a speech, or if I meet somebody and tell them something, they are likely to listen to me. They'll and especially because I represent what I'm talking about, because I represent the very philosophy that I'm preaching. So what exactly are those areas? If you can pinpoint them and pull them out, then straight away it makes a whole lot of things easier for you. What it does is it makes you, first of all, an icon of what you're going to say, a representation of what you're trying to convey. And after that, when you go ahead and convey it, people have no problem believing that, what you're saying has credibility, and, you are somebody who walks the talk, and that makes them want to be your fans. Yes. And I've seen this happen with a lot of people. And if you look at some of the people who give TED Talks, you'll be surprised to see that a lot of people are from various walks of life, but they've gone through a real experience or a realization or a transformation, and they've gone through it themselves. They walk the talk, and when they are listened to by others, others say, wow, I understand this. This person's really been there, done that, and I'm willing to listen to this person, and I also look up to this person because of that. Okay. So the second part of the story is walking the talk. The third part of the look at yourself part. So the first thing we said was to be present, to be there. The second part was walk the talk. And the third part is what I call passion. I think so I want to make a distinction between the two. So one of the things is walking the talk. But there's something about the quality of passion, which itself is contagious. So I'm sure you must have all met at some point managers or mentors or somebody in your life who tried to convey something to you, but didn't have that impact or the kind of passion that's required for you to get kick-started. And because of that, you didn't buy into it. You didn't really, in fact, if you look closely at this image, I don't know how well you can see it, but if you look closely at it, behind the word passion, there's something which is written in really fine print. It's called blah blah blah. So if you don't have the passion, then everything that you say is just going to be blah blah blah. So the point is, if along with picking something that you stand for, I think it is important that you pick something that is there to convey. In fact, I've suggested to some managers with some of our clients' organizations to do this. I've told them that, especially when it comes to team management, when it comes to getting people to listen and buy into your idea, I've told them, just do this for the next 1 month. Do not tell your team or team members a single thing which you aren't able to demonstrate, okay, which you don't trust or you don't feel passionate about, and finally, which you don't really stand for. And if you can do this, if you can just start by speaking those areas, and if you say that, look, I'm really not, I work for this company, but honestly, I'm not so passionate about growing the business. I'm not so passionate about, punctuality, but what I'm really passionate about is producing high quality work. If that's what you feel, I think you should go ahead and convey just that one idea to your team members with passion. And that is something which will give you far better results. And when you do this for some time, you'll start realizing that, if you sort of tune yourself into this, you start realizing that there are some things apart from just the quality of work. There are some more things that you are actually passionate about. And if you can pick up those things and also start, conveying those and getting your listeners to buy into those ideas, slowly and steadily, they will start seeing you as a passionate person, because almost everything that you say is said with passion. Every idea has passion in it, right? And this passion flows into the other person. So if you want to make your team passionate about something, going back to this, it starts with yourself. You got to first have it. If you have something, you can give it. If you don't have it, you can't. The rules are simple. So start by picking up some things that you are passionate about and conveying that to your audience. And that itself will move them from being mere listeners of your idea to people who are fans of what you're saying and your philosophy. So that's really the first part of the story. Okay, so if you do have any questions, please put them up here. Okay, I have a lot of responses here. Okay, Sadhana says, good morning, Vinesh. Thank you. I can hear now. That's nice to know. Arnold says, what about faking it till you make it? Okay, so Arnold Cardoz. Okay, so Arnold, thanks for your question. This whole element of faking it till you make it. Let me tell you two or three things about it. One of the things about faking it till you make it is, as I must confess that as an idea, it works in many areas. So for example, if you don't have confidence, okay, if you're not a confident person, acting confident for some period of time, just acting like you're confident, okay, will make you a confident person over a period of time. So what happens is each time you act confident, okay, you're just trying to walk, act, use your voice, you're trying to do all this like you're a confident person. And what this does is it changes the people's reaction towards you. Okay, where earlier if people were like say laughing at you or giggling, now they're starting to take you seriously. And this has a sort of, it has a sort of, there's a feedback mechanism. You pick up those signals and you start realizing that, hey, guess what, I am in fact confident now. So what this does is it changes your environment and the inputs that you get from your surroundings and the people around you, and that sort of makes you feel confident. So that is one area where I think fake it till you make it works. Another area where I think it really works is, like, I've done a lot of work with organizations to help them do things like, for example, in the area of people assessment and in the area of behavioral assessment, one of the things is called as a behavioral event interview. Okay, conducting a behavioral event interview, or also say a competency based interview, and so on. Now there are X number of steps in it. There are X number of steps, things to do and things not to do to make it a top class interview. If you just follow it, okay, if you just follow it, maybe you don't, you don't know it correctly yet. It doesn't come to you naturally. That's fine. You just go out there. You can probably fake it and carry out that whole interview like that. But it will still come out right because it's a formula. It's 5 steps. Okay, and after, when you do this 3 or 4 or 5 times, it's going to become your natural style, and that's the time when they say that you actually made it. And the last point that I want to tell you, Arnold, about fake it till you make it, is that there are some things which you simply can't fake. For example, if you run a marathon, whether you fake it, whether you don't fake it, you finish the marathon. It's that simple. There's no way to fake it and finish the marathon. Okay, so do keep in mind that there are some things like that. All right, so let me move on. If you have any more questions, anybody, please do put it up on the chat screen. I'm watching the chat screen very closely, and I'm happy to answer the questions as we go along. Okay. All right, so let's move to the next part, which is about looking at others. So far we said the starting point of moving people from being listeners to being your fans is to look at yourself. The next part of the story is to look at others. So what is it that you can do with respect to the others? And in this case, others mean the person who's listening to you. So let me look at the first thing. And this is something that a very popular icon always said. Yeah, who's this? So I think Arnold has said thank you. Sure, Arnold, you're welcome. Sure, Arnold. So this is one of the things that a popular icon, and that icon is Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs had certain secrets to the way he presented. In fact, every time a new Apple product came out, the way it was launched and presented was really, it was awaited by the entire industry. People waited for it. People wanted to go and see it. When they launched the first iPhone, I think in 8 or 9 days they sold out. All right. So that being the case, one of the big secrets of Steve Jobs, as he himself said, is why does it matter? people are asking you this question, your listeners are asking you, so why does it matter? And even before your listeners ask you the question, it's important for you to first ask yourself, why does it matter to my listeners? Why does what matter? Why does what I'm going to say matter? So if you're going to talk about, in fact, they did I mean, when I do workshops in different organizations, you know, there are a lot of people. I mean, just going back to the example of conducting interviews. You know, a lot of times I end up training people who are the interviewers or the panel members of an organization. And one of the questions that's often asked is, or people come into the program, maybe they don't ask the question, but you know, from their body language, from their behavior, one of the signals that I pick up is people are sitting there saying, why do I need this? Because I've conducted 100 interviews, 1,000 interviews, 2,000 interviews, and so on. So why do I need this? All right. Um, and the moment I tell them that this method of interviewing is called behavioral event interviewing, and if you learn this, not only does it make you a better interviewer, it also makes you a better candidate, because some of the best companies in the world today follow this method of interviewing. The moment I tell them this, you'd be amazed at how serious they become in terms of wanting to make notes, understand it better, and learn it. Because then they realize that this really matters to them. It would not just make them perform better in their current roles, but it would also help them perhaps jump into a much better role in a different organization. So this is something that you have to think about. I mean, I tell people the first thing that you need to think about if you're going to talk about a topic or put an idea across to somebody or even give a presentation or a training is to ask yourself, why does this matter? Why does this topic matter to that person? What's in it for them? Okay. And if you can't collect enough things, or if you think about your topic or what you're going to say and think, I mean, I can't pinpoint anything. I can't really think about what's in it for them. Then I don't think you should talk about it. I mean, you know, you got to really think about it. Then you got to think about if after you give your presentation and before you give your presentation, there's not much difference. Then I think you're better off not giving it. You'll at least save a lot of time, effort, energy. So a fundamental question for you to ask yourself about what you're going to say is, why does it matter? So the second dimension of looking at yourself. Okay, so this is interesting. There's a gentleman with this rather old style camera, and that's what he's holding in his hand is a flash bulb. Yes, and in pop psychology, there's something called as a flash bulb memory. Okay, a flash bulb memory is it, it it's like this, you know. A lot of people might not remember, or for example, a lot of people might remember the great incidents of our times. For example, the time the tsunami hit, or the time when the 9/11 attacks happened, or the 26/11 attacks happened, which just got over, or the anniversary of that got over, or the time when one of our important prime ministers was assassinated, and so on. They remember those incidents because emotions were high. Likewise, there are some times when I've coached people who are perhaps in the mid 40s, but they remember one time in school when they were punished in front of the whole class, or they were slapped in front of the whole, in front of their classmates, and so on. Now, this is called as a flashbulb memory. When emotions are high, you tend to remember things which happened almost photographically. On the other hand, we have a huge problem remembering what we had for breakfast last Monday, last week. We have a huge problem remembering uh, whether we, paid the bill on Thursday or on Friday, something which is that recent. So this is really what a flashbulb memory is all about. Flashbulb memory means when the emotions are high, people remember what you say. Not just for a short period of time, but maybe for a long period of time, for years to come. So the next point in terms of keeping others into consideration, in terms of looking at others, is this. is to make sure that what you're saying is loaded with emotion of some sort. And I don't mean emotion in terms of making them emotional or making them feel sad, though that works equally well. But what is important is for the person speaking or presenting to appeal to the other person's emotions. And there are times when, I have gone back into an organization after like 6 or 7 years after doing a workshop for them or a program for them, and I've met some people who remember the program because of some things that happened. Just to give you a few examples, when we do outbound workshops, when we take people out of their workplace into a resort or or some place outside, okay, uh, and get them to do certain things like rappelling, jumping into water from a certain height with life jackets, or doing whitewater rafting or something like that. What happens is the emotions are so high because there's fear, there's anxiety, there's a sense of adventure, there's, they're wondering if they can do it or not, and this appeals to their emotions, and because of this they remember that whole program, and they remember that program for years to come. So this is one of the ways to make people your fans, is to appeal to their emotions. Another thing you could do is, I mean, I'm not suggesting that each time you have to take somebody to the wilderness to, to up their emotions. Even in a session, having a really, something like a really heated debate. I remember long back, I don't want to name this organization, but this happened in 2007. There was this company where I had this debate about, I love working here, I hate working here. Okay, and we had two teams. We had the love team and we had the hate team. Typically, the love team in that company were people who joined kind of, recently, and the hate team were the people who were there for a little longer. And they had this huge debate trying to justify, each team trying to justify their stand. And what happened was, it really at some point, it kind of got personal, and people started giving specific instances of why it's a bad organization, why it's a good organization, and all this upped the emotions. And many things I said even after that stuck in their heads. And I know this because I continue to do work with them, and even now some of those people who continue to work there talk about that debate we had at that time. So it's important that one of the things which will help you do this is by appealing to the emotions. In fact, just to give you one more example, this also works well when I do some coaching sessions with people. When I have an exercise on, say, reflection, when a person is saying that, I'm just stuck with this thing is happening in my head, I don't know how to get it out of, and then I ask them to close their eyes and go inwards and see what they're feeling, and explore that and help them process that. Sometimes they cry, sometimes they break down, sometimes they bring out a lot of emotions, and they share what they felt like and how bad it was, or how, when this happens, again, emotions are high, and they tend to remember that coaching session. Not only the coaching session, they tend to remember you. They tend to remember you because of what happened, right? So this is the second point. Okay, I do see some questions here. Okay, there's one question. I mean, it's addressed to me personally, so I'm not reading the person's name. The question is it, if I make sure the person gets emotional as a result of my communication, will that be a good thing or a bad thing? Okay, so to answer this question, as I just mentioned, I want to make a distinction between person getting emotional, okay? Because many times when we say emotional, we tend to think of negative emotions, okay? But if your understanding is that emotional means emotions are high, I think it's all right. And my suggestion would be always, whenever whenever it is possible to bring about change, if you can appeal to a person's positive emotions, that's great and that's good enough. Sometimes there is clogged or locked up negative emotion which needs release. Sometimes, if with frequent what should I say, instances of visiting positive emotions, the person still not able to change but taking it too lightly, I have in my experience, seen that triggering some negative emotions like fear, like what could happen if the person doesn't change, like a sense of anxiety, guilt, or hopelessness. These things sometimes provoke people to change. So my suggestion would be you can use negative emotions as a to provoke change, okay? Positive emotions to motivate people to change. So I think many times positive emotions motivating people to change is good enough, right? And in the, with respect to the presentation or the, the webinar that we're talking about, either of these will make people your fans, because the idea is whether it's you're triggering a positive or a negative emotion, you're trying to bring about positive change. It's never otherwise. All right. The third part of looking at others, so we said the first thing is why does it matter to them? The second thing is appeal to the emotions, and they would not just listen to you but become your fans because of the phenomenon of flashbulb memory. And the third thing is, don't you know? In fact, this is something I find very fascinating because uh, Bodhi has a pool of about 75 to 100 trainers spread across the country. And quite often, one of the things that tends to happen is our clients or one of our clients wants to evaluate our trainers, okay, for an upcoming program. And even yesterday, I was talking to one of our trainers who's going to be evaluated. It's like an assessment. The client wants to find out, are you a good trainer? Are you mediocre? Are you bad? Are you good enough to do the workshop for us? And so on. And in fact, those of you here on this call, I can see some of you, those of you on this webinar, people like Dinar, people like Laren and so on, Sanjay Mulasheri, who attended the Train the Trainer certification. I'm sure you are aware that in our Train the Trainer certification, we prepare you to make a top class demo. When you're getting certified by us to go out and become a successful trainer in a field of your choice. So what happens, what this point really means is that the whole world is really about what I know and what you don't know. And many times I've followed, I spend a lot of my non-working life in social situations, whether it's a party or out for dinner or going out with friends. And I've always noticed that in social conversations as well, a lot of people are trying to tell you what they know and what you don't know. So for example, if you say, hey, have you tried out this new restaurant? They have some really good prawns, or they have some really good lasagna. They say, oh, really? Where is it? And then the next thing they would say is, but you should try the prawns at this restaurant. They are really good. Or you should try the lasagna at this restaurant. So, people are constantly trying to tell you what they know and what you don't know. Okay? And I don't think this is true of every single person on the planet, but I think it's a really comfortable generalization to make, because a lot of people are like this, and this holds good even to your listeners. So imagine that you have something really valuable to offer. For example, you have a really unique leadership model, okay, and you've really mastered the art of using it as a result of the companies that you worked in and the result of the places you did this for and so on. And this model is, okay, I don't want to name any particular model. Let's just call this the 6-step model to effective leadership. Okay, by the way, I'm just making this name of the model up. Now, you go and tell this to somebody who's already aware of this model and who's read the book on it and who's heard about it and whose manager probably told them about it enough times and so on. Even though you go and tell this person a model which you're really good at and which you're able to use and which is an effective model, his interest level in it is really low. It's the equivalent of, just imagine this, there's a movie that's running called, what's that called? Dear Zindagi, correct? Now, imagine you went and watched the movie and you went and spoke to one of your friends and your friend is saying, hey, I watched this movie called Dear Zindagi. Let me tell you the story. Would that interest you? Because you just watched the movie and it might be an amazing movie and maybe even you thought it was amazing, but you still don't want to hear that whole story again because you know it. So one of the things which you could do to make people your fans and not just listen is to tell them things that they don't know. And what does this mean? This means things like, if you're doing your research, suppose you're giving a talk or a presentation on communication, don't run a search for the word communication and pick up the top 5 results or 10 results on the Google page, because that's exactly what every regular Joe out there does. Don't search for a video and pick up the top 5 videos or 10 videos which come through a communication search on YouTube, because that's again what every person out there who's not really listened to does. So my point is, let your research have depth. Go beyond the surface. And honestly, it's not really that difficult to do, because I've noticed there are so many people out there who are stuck on the surface, that if you just scratch the surface a little and go a little deeper, you will be able to get to know things, retain them, demonstrate them in your own life, as well as talk about them and transfer it to somebody else. And that will be things that people look at and say, wow, this is really interesting. I really like what this guy is saying, because I've not heard about it before. So my suggestion to you is, don't get stuck on the surface. Go beyond, dig deeper, tell people something that they don't know. In fact, this is a strategy that I suggest to a lot of people who I mentor to be trainers. If they're going to do, say, a session, a demo in a company which is into telecom. Say it's a telecom service provider. Let me not mention anybody's name. It's a telecom service provider called Airbell. Okay. So now when you go there, if you can even start your session by telling this company 5 things that they don't know about themselves, 5 things that they don't know about their own market perception, 5 things that they don't know about who are their real competitors. If you can tell them this, they are more likely to want to listen to you, remember you, and become your fans, because they realize that you have something to offer. Because they realize that you can tell them things that they don't know. The worst thing to do is to go to a company and tell them it was started in this year, this person was the founder, it's been so many years. They immediately write you off saying, man, tell me something I don't know. Please tell me at least one thing I don't know. And that's the psychology of the audience. All right, to do a quick recap. So we started by saying, look at yourself. So be present, walk the talk, and have passion. If you're going to look at others, why does it matter to them? The idea of flashbulb memory. And finally, don't tell them something that you don't know. Let me move to the last part of this webinar, which is about providing real solutions. Now, this is really what's happening in the industry, and I must say, being somebody from I happen to be the principal consultant and one of the directors at Bodhi Training Solutions, and we are, I must say, at this point, one of the most agile organizations in the training and organizational development space in the country. And constantly, one of the challenges that I find with many of our clients is that training as a field or as an idea is not taken seriously enough in many organizations. And one of the reasons is, and I think it's a very valid and good reason, for years and years, departments like HR and training didn't really produce concrete, measurable results. They didn't really contribute directly and strongly to organizational growth. And I would say maybe 50% of them did, but there are 50% for whom training was just a tick mark. HR people were just people who showed up to work. So this being the case, it has some bad reputation which surrounds it. And one of the things that I have been suggesting and talking about and telling people is to be able to change that, to provide real solutions. And this is also something that will move you, because I do know people who are in the training industry, who are in the L&D space, who are HR managers, who are taken terribly seriously. They are invited to every big meeting in their company because the organization knows that this person's work and efforts are contributing directly to growth and perhaps directly to profits. Yes. So what are some things that you can do? What are some real solutions that you could provide? One thing that I've seen which helps and which makes your listeners move from just listeners to being your fans is what I'd like to call building real competence. And so one of the things that I do apart from work is juggling. I'm a ball juggler. I'm still trying to learn it better and get better at it. But at the moment, as we speak, I'm a 4-ball juggler. I'm trying to move to becoming a 5-ball juggler. But the point is, when you teach somebody something new, and when they're able to demonstrate it, when they have a new ability, the tendency of human beings is to broadcast it. They would like to show it to other people. I mean, the reason why websites like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter became popular is because people like to broadcast. In fact, the tagline of YouTube is broadcast yourself, right? So people like to show the world what they know. Sometimes it's sharing, sometimes it's blatant showing off, sometimes it's just trying it out in front of a group and seeing whether you can still do it as well, and so on, and the various versions and avatars of this. So what you could do to move people from being listeners to your fans is to get people to develop a new skill, to acquire a new ability well enough for them to be able to demonstrate it. And this is a really powerful quality or a solution that you can provide. And I've noticed that with a lot of organizations that I've worked, instead of having a very strong post-training follow-up process and individual development plan and all those things, if you could just get people, for example, if you're trying to move people from being arrogant or too quiet to being assertive. Okay, this is what you're trying to do in a training program. If you can get them to understand assertiveness, practice it so that they can demonstrate it comfortably without thinking twice in front of anybody. You don't have to worry about them. You can just let them go. They are going to go out and practice it. Because people would like to try out new things that they've learned. They enjoy doing it. So one of the ways to move people from listeners to being your fans is getting them to acquire something new, to learn something new, which they can demonstrate without your help thereafter. And that is something that they will carry with them. And and then once they're able to do it, in fact, each time they do it, they're going to think of you till a point when when it becomes second nature to them. But they are going to think of you until that point. So this is a great idea for you to keep in mind if you want to move people into being your fans. The other thing okay, so I just have about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to, there are two more important ideas I want to share with you. In the meantime, if you do have some questions, please put your questions down in the chat screen, because I'm watching the chat screen very closely. Okay, and there is one question here. Again, a private message. One second. Yeah. So this is from Sadhana, who says, to share something with the participants what they don't know, apart from conducting precursor sessions with the participants, what are the other ways to do so? Okay, I think that's a great question, Sadhana. So Sadhana basically says, how can I find out things which they don't know and share it? Okay. So let me tell you two or three things which I've done many times and which has worked for me. So if I'm, let me see what Sadhana says. Does she say participants? Yes. So if I'm going to meet a group of participants, here's what I'm going to do. One is, the first thing I pick their organization, and I'll give you the example of a recent company which I did a session in, and one part of this session was about their values. Okay. So I went into their website, and there is one part of, they're part of a larger group, and that group has certain values. So I went into that company, and and when I reached this part of the program, I told them, now you all been working here for, how many years, and you are aware that your organization has about 9 values, correct? So I want you to tell me, what are these 9 values? And what do these values mean? And you'll be amazed that each of these people I think each person on an average must have got 2 or 3 right. The remaining they just couldn't remember, or even if they remembered, in fact, they came up with some values of their own which are not even on the list. So one thing is to really study their website closely and get information. The second thing that you could do is look at what other companies are saying about them. Look at what neutral outsiders, people who are writing articles, critics are saying about them. Look at what is being said about them in the news. These are things which will really help you say something which they don't know. The third thing that you could do is you could look at your training area, okay, and pick out some things in your training area. For example, a very popular concept, and this is I keep sharing this with my participants, something like SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, and so on. Now, everybody's heard about this. The moment you go and tell this to an audience, the feeling that they have is, I know this. It's debatable whether they actually know it and are able to use it or not. But the feeling is, I know this, or at least I've heard about this before. So picking up concepts which are effective, but which are not all over the place, is something that certainly helps you. The other thing which would also help is using a tool like, what should I say? Basically using something like Google Alerts, which will give you the latest information which hits the internet. So every time there's a company which is putting up something new and the Google crawler picks it up, you will get an email. And this is something which will help you identify something which was just introduced by, like for example, if you know about a model of goal setting which was introduced by a researcher in Harvard yesterday, it's very likely that many people don't know it yet. And when you go and talk about it and you present it, people are willing to listen to you because they see you as somebody who has state-of-the-art, up-to-date information. So I hope those things help, Sadhana. All right, so let me move on to the next part of providing real solutions, which is, well, as this image conveys, which is really about having fun. Okay. Now, there are a lot of organizations which face this, where training is seen as something mundane. Training is seen as something like, you're just forced to go for. There's a category of participants called a thumped audience. All right, who are just forced or pushed into the training room. And one of my ways or methods of battling that has been to change the whole weather and change that mindset in an organization by first of all making training fun, by making training something that that people enjoy. So what happens is people walk into a training session thinking that they're going to come to have some fun today, okay, or they're going to have 2 days of fun. But in the process, you also learn a great deal. Okay, so another way to, this also, ties in with some things I said earlier. I'd mentioned earlier about, if you can appeal to a person's emotions, you can make them your fans and not just your listeners. Fun is a brilliant emotion. When people have fun, emotions are high. They're laughing. Sometimes there are tears coming through their eyes because of how much they're laughing. And when these things happen in a training program, what it does is it makes your program memorable. It makes people your fans. Also, I'd like to add, while we're at this, especially because I see many of you here on this webinar are trainers, one of the mistakes that many trainers make, many consultants make, is that they pump fun irrelevantly. Mostly when we're training adults, one of the things that they're looking for is meaning. One of the things that they're looking for is relevance. So what happens is, I recently, because of the work that I do, I end up watching a lot of trainers doing sessions. And this gentleman is a very senior trainer. He must be 60 or 65. Used to be a professor, now is a trainer. And he takes this group of about 20 people. This is happening in a resort. He takes them out of this banquet hall, onto the lawn, and he makes them do an exercise where they're throwing balls. One person throws a ball to another person throws a ball, various combinations and ways of throwing balls. And this is happening right in the morning, okay? He does this for about 30 minutes and then he brings them back to the room and he says, okay, now let's start the session. And there were a lot of people saying, what was that? What was the point of that ball throwing session for 30 minutes? There was no proper debrief, so it didn't have any meaning. It didn't link up to anything that we're going to do now. Okay, it wasn't an energizer because the day just started, we were already energized. In fact, we are feeling a little tired after the exercise. Yes. So those are some things which, you know, you need to keep in mind when you're, I see some of you have, if you put your audio on or video on, could you please put it off? Okay, thank you. All right, so those are some of the things to keep in mind where the fun has to have, it has to be fun with meaning. It can't be fun which is meaningless. All right, because adults like meaning, they're constantly looking at meaning, looking at relevance, looking at practical applications, looking at taking what they learn into a situation where they can use it in life. Well, the clock has really ticked. I have about 2 more minutes. So let me leave you with my last idea, which is, well, here there's this wonderful looking lady who says 7 things you should keep secret. I don't know what she's really talking about, but here's what I'm talking about. What will make people your fans? And this works in any relationship, even in a normal girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, two friends, and so on. One of the things that keeps people makes people continues to keep a person as a fan of another is because they feel that there's more. They feel that there is something more to derive, get, learn, absorb from this person. The moment they see that you are an empty vessel, then the energy and interest runs out. Yes. In fact, uh, there was a study which said a lot of the couples who are bored of each other, they feel that the other person has nothing to offer anymore, right? So it's important for us to keep reinventing ourselves. And importantly, when it comes to moving your listeners into fans, your listeners will first of all become your fans because they see some sense of enigma. They see some mystery. They see something more than what meets the eye, right? And also the other thing is when you're speaking to people or when you're giving a presentation or a training, make sure you drop you sprinkle ideas into that presentation or that training, telling them this is just the tip of the iceberg, there's a lot more to it. And by the way, don't just say this as a strategy. You should actually genuinely have a lot more to it. And that's when you would be far more interesting. People would move from being just listeners to being your fans, and want to stick with you because there's that much more to learn. And that's one of the qualities in which I see in all kinds of spiritual leaders in all religions across the world, is that they have so much more to say and share and enlighten, that people want to stick with them because they see that I've just gotten a fraction of what this person has and it's changed my life. Imagine if I get more, what it could do to me. That's the whole thinking. So folks, I know the clock is ticked beyond our time. So I will leave you with that thought. If you do have any questions, please put them up on the chat screen. But those of you who have just blocked exactly an hour, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the session. My name is Vinesh Sukumaran, and I'll sign off. And these are the contact details. You can feel free to get in touch with us. That's our website ID. I hope you found the session useful. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the Wednesday and rest of the week. All right. Thank you very much. I'll leave this up on the screen. So Sadhana, with the 7 things which the lady is talking about, honestly, I don't know what they are, but what I was telling you is that have 7, 10, few things which are kept secret, which you bring out just from time to time. Don't empty your entire vessel. I have a question here from Dinar who says, how can one actually teach a new skill or ability in the short time of training? So Dinar, I want to just answer that very directly. This is what we constantly tell our clients, and I constantly tell people who I consult with. If you have 5 days, there are certain things I can do. If you have 4 days, there are certain things I can do. If you have one day, there are certain things I can do. If you have just 1 hour, there are certain things I can do, right? So if I want to just tell somebody how to use a richer voice, I can do it in about 30 minutes. But if I want to tell somebody how to build rapport with an absolute stranger and get that person to trust you, then I can do that it'll take me an entire day. So what I would suggest, keeping in mind the amount of time you have, I think you should decide what competence can be built. Okay, so that's my take on that, Dinar. So what I suggest you do is, don't feel, I mean, the implied problem in your question is that there isn't enough time to train on all the things that they want you to train. You should reduce it to what can be trained in that limited time. And I think people are better off learning something well than getting a glimpse of many things. Okay, what do we have here? Hina says thank you. Welcome. You're welcome. All those who said thank you and exited. Okay, who's this? Sarvesh says how to say no gracefully to a manager. So Sarvesh, there are a lot of things that we cover in one of our sessions. We in our programs on assertiveness, there are a lot of things that we cover. But let me just quickly tell you one or two things which you can do to say no gracefully. One way to say no is to say yes and give your reason for not doing it. Okay, so if somebody says, could you finish this, you will say, well, I'd really love to finish it, but right now I'm working on this. Okay, so that's a graceful way to say no, because you're not even saying no, you're saying yes. Another interesting way to say no is to actually reason things out. If a person is asking you to do something which is unreasonable, you can first of all tell that person, look, I am happy to do this, provided I buy into this idea. Okay, because right now my reason for not doing it is because I'm not prepared, there's not enough time. Second reason for not doing it is that I haven't done this before. And third reason, it doesn't interest me. So if you can help me solve these three problems, if you can get me interested enough in it, if you can tell me how to do it as a first timer, and fourthly, if you can make me good at this, I'm happy to do it. Because most of the time when we are saying no, we have our own reasons for it. So these are two things which you can try out, Sarvesh. I think it should work. Okay. Hina, Train the Trainer from Bodhi has entirely changed my professional life positively. All the best. Thank you, Hina Siddiqui. It's really nice to know that our Train the Trainer has changed your life positively. We're very happy for that. Congratulations. You're welcome, Dinar. I see you say thank you. As always, it was a pleasure to listen to you. That's nice to know. All right, so I think that was the last question that I have here, and we have taken almost 5-6 minutes beyond our time limit. So I'll leave this on the screen. I'm signing off. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Have a nice rest of the week. And we will keep you posted of upcoming webinars. We have a training foundation course starting in Bangalore this Friday. So if you know any people interested, please ask them to get in touch with us. We have a Train the Trainer certification starting in Bangalore on Monday, and as well as in Mumbai, the foundation and certification are starting on Monday. So if there's anybody who you know might be interested, do ask them to get in touch with us. The numbers are here on the screen. Thank you very much.